computer. All right. Okay, so we are recording now. I'm gonna hand over the mic to you, Desiree. Or before we go over to that, Byron, do you want to welcome everybody in the name of Fundación Autismo, and then Desiree will hand it over to you. Do you want to do that, Byron?
Sure thing. Good afternoon, everybody who is here present on Zoom. Kung tayo gente que está presente no Zoom. I'm Byron Lasir, embajador de Fundación Autismo Aruba. I am Byron Lasir, the ambassador of Fundación Autismo Aruba and host of Stima Un Autista. And it's an honor for me to hand over the mic to one of my guests from the February episode, Deseray, who will begin the show. Deseray, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Byron. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be able to present this workshop to you today. I guess I'll introduce myself when I attend workshops. I like to know who's giving the workshop. So again, my name is Deseray Onyema. I am a school psychologist. I live in New Jersey in the United States, but I work in Manhattan. So for the past, I guess it's like 17 years now, I've been working with children up to adulthood with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So for the first 7 years of my career, I worked for the National Institute for People with Disabilities in New York City, providing at-home services. So I would go in the home and work on community integration, self-advocacy, social skills, and things of that nature. I then worked 1 year with the Head Injury Association, working with adults with traumatic brain injury and adults on the spectrum in a residential facility. And then I became a school psychologist, and since then I've been working in schools. So I've worked from preschool up until 12th grade, and then on the side I've done early intervention work. So that's kind of what guides my experience and knowledge in this area. Currently, I work in a specialized high school in Harlem for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and teens on the spectrum. Okay, so we have a small group today. I usually like to be interactive with workshops. I understand everyone doesn't like to be on camera, but if you can put in the chat, I'm monitoring the chat with another laptop. If you're a parent, if you're an educator, if you're an adult that's on the spectrum, just so I know who's attending the workshop today. And if you are a parent, the age of your child would be helpful. Just gonna give you a few seconds to do that. And if you have a piece of paper next to you or you don't, that would be helpful to get it. I like to be interactive and have you write down a few things as we go through the workshop. Okay. Let's give you a few seconds. Or you can unmute yourself and say it if you like. Okay. All right, a parent advocate. Okay. Educator and mom of a little boy on the spectrum. I'm a mother and educator. Okay, wonderful. Okay, great. Okay, so today we are talking about relationship, sexuality, and safety. I like to talk about this topic because it is something that sometimes is uncomfortable for people to discuss, but the more you talk about it, the more comfortable you get with speaking on these topics. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So I'm going to start. So yes, the topic is relationship, sexuality, and safety. The goal of the workshop really is to give you some information and then have you leave with conversations that you can have with your child, conversations you can have in the educational environments, and conversations you can have with your parents if you are a teen or adult on the spectrum. So I wanted to start off first with some of the expectations or generalizations that are often seen when people are discussing neurotypical children and youth on the spectrum. So with neurotypical children and youth, there's often an expectation that they're going to become more independent as they grow older. There's often more clear boundaries, less touching and physical support, and more requests for consent when touching or giving support to them. And what I've noticed with children and youth on the spectrum, especially adults, they're often infantilized. So despite someone knowing their abilities, strengths, they may be viewed as a child. People might not speak directly to them. They might, if a parent is there and they're a teen or older, they might speak directly to the parent regarding them and not even address that person. And the expectation of what they're able to do sometimes is limited in another person's mind. They may need continued support to be kept safe. They are used to accepting more touch from family members, teachers, school staff, and service providers. This is something I see in the school a lot. Some of our students on the spectrum, they may receive physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, counseling. They may have more medical appointments. They may need additional support when completing activities. So they're used to more touch from individuals and more physical support at times, depending on the support they need. And oftentimes things are done for them and there's no establishing of consent first. So it's something I noticed when I worked in a general education school. When working with teens, maybe a teacher would ask, can I get your book for you? Can I open your book bag for you? Do you need me to help you to do this? And then when I was in a specialized education setting, adults would sometimes just do it for the teen. They wouldn't ask them first for consent before entering into their physical space, touching their items, giving them physical support. So that's something that often can be seen in education settings. At home, parents may feel the need to offer additional support, even more support than their child may need at that moment based on their independence level, because they've been given more support for the child since they were younger. And also in medical facilities, sometimes when I used to go on appointments with some of the adults I would work with, the doctor would be speaking to me and not the patient. So it's something just to keep in mind when we go into this topic, because we want to empower children, teens, and adults on the spectrum as much as possible. Another thing I would like to discuss and for us to think about is learning styles. So as we go through the workshop, I want you to think in your mind, how can I utilize this information so that learning takes place? So for parents, it's important to remember that your child may not learn best just through talking or explanations. They often need explicit teaching and practice. And there's multiple ways that individuals learn. So some people learn best through visuals. So learning through seeing, the use of posters, the use of visual aids, the use of social stories. Some people learn best through auditory, learning through listening, audiobooks, listening to a presentation. Some people learn better through touch, tactile, so doing an activity. Some people learn best through doing and experiencing. My suggestion is when talking about these topics, tapping into all of these ways they can learn, because it drives home the issue more and gives them more practice. So remember all the time that you serve as a model for your children, and it's best to start teaching these skills from a young age. So as I go through the presentation, I won't be talking about age as much as basic skills and advanced skills. So if you know you can pinpoint where your child falls or where you yourself fall in terms of your knowledge in these different areas, and focus on the basic skills and then move on to the advanced skills. It's never too late to start. All of these skills last a lifetime. And as much as you can, try to collaborate with people in your village, whether it's teachers, school staff, health professionals, foundations, wherever you can get support, I recommend you do so. Okay, so the first topic we're going to go into is safety. I start with safety because it is a major concern for most people when talking about relationships, when talking about dating, when talking about sexuality. And talking to parents, safety is usually at the top of their concern list. And why is safety usually at the top of most people's concerns list? This is a statistic. It came from the Autism Research Institute. It really was a review of multiple studies. Some of these studies took place in Canada, Switzerland, Australia. It really were global studies, and this is some of the information they gathered. So autistic youth are 3 to 4 times more likely than non-autistic youth to experience sexual victimization. And between 40% and 50% of autistic adults report experiences of sexual abuse during childhood. Similarly, autistic adults report a higher prevalence of sexual harassment and abuse than the neurotypical population. So keep in mind with these statistics, how can we address this issue? And it's with education, it's with communication, and it's with not making these topics taboo. So that's why when I speak to parents, I say, don't avoid the topic. In order to empower your child, this is the way to do it. In order to keep them safe, talking about these topics is the way to go. Okay, I'm going to start with basic skills. So these are some skills to prioritize when talking about safety. 1, knowing the name of their body parts. Asking for help. It's okay to say no. Appropriate touch, inappropriate touch. Recognizing personal space. The difference between strangers and safe people to talk to, and knowing their personal information. These are basic skills that all children should be taught. So knowing the name of your body parts, I'll be getting into this more in detail, but it's important to use the actual names of body parts with your children and teaching them it. So I know in certain households, they use, oh, this is your flower, or different nicknames for body parts, but it's essential that all children know the accurate names of their body parts, especially so when they communicate what's happening with their body, it can be clear to whoever they're communicating to. Asking for help. We'll be talking about later regarding children knowing who they can ask for help and having identified people that they can go to when they're having an issue or concern that they want to discuss. Knowing that it's okay to say no. Oftentimes, children try to appease adults, try to appease people within their environment. It's important for your child to know that in certain circumstances, especially when they feel uncomfortable, that it is okay to tell adults and peers no. Appropriate and inappropriate touch, we'll be getting more into that. Understanding personal space, knowing what personal space is, why it's important to maintain and protect your personal space with others. Knowing who are strangers, who are safe people to talk to, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your village, who's around you, or community helpers like police officers, firefighters, who are the people that they can go to when they need assistance. And of course, knowing their personal information is important for all children to know, because in a state of an emergency, they need to be able to state and share that information. Okay. This skill, when talking about young children, these are some things that parents can do. So when bathing your children, that's an opportunity to talk and teach labeling body parts and what body parts are public body parts and what are private. Again, using anatomically correct names for genitals. So it is very important to use accurate language for body parts and bodily functions. So they can report abuse or report something that's happening to them if it does occur. There's times that as a mandated reporter in a school, I'm part of the investigative process when a child might come and say, this happened with a parent in school, this happened with a parent, this happened with a parent. And if I have experienced oftentimes where children are confused about what body part, the names of their body parts. It's very hard to get accurate information out of them, or what body parts are public and what are private to touch. So these are conversations that you should be having with your child. Whenever possible from a young age, encourage independence in wiping, cleaning, going to the bathroom. And by this, I mean doing hand over hand when teaching some of these skills. And it drives home the point that your child's body belongs to them. Okay, their body and consent. So it's important to teach your child that they own their body. You can explain the difference between private body parts. One way to do it is what's covered by a bathing suit. That's what you would consider a private body part. And what parts of your body do you use for walking, that you use for eating, that you use for doing homework? That's a great tool to explain to young children about private body parts. And it's important also to teach children as well. Although these are your private body parts, there are other parts of your body that if someone touches them and they feel uncomfortable, you still should be communicating that this is uncomfortable. I don't feel comfortable with you grabbing my arm or holding my hand. So just because it's not a private body part doesn't mean that other people can touch it without your consent. So that's a part of the conversation to convey to them as well. So children on the spectrum, they're often accepting a lot of touch without first being asked to give consent. So it's even more important to explain that they do have a choice to being hugged, to being accepting of physical touch. And if they do not want to participate in sharing affection, they are always allowed to say no. So as you see at the bottom picture, a child might be comfortable with giving high fives and shaking hands, but they may not be comfortable with giving hugs. I know even when I was a child with parents or with grandparents, your family member might say, oh, I knew this person from years ago. Go give them a hug. And the child looks uncomfortable. And you force the child to give an adult a hug. Even though it's a family member, it's not a great practice to do. Really, you should ask a child, okay, you might not want to give them a hug, but what are you comfortable with giving them? Maybe the child wants to give them a high five. Maybe the child wants to give them a thumbs up. So from a young age, really working with children, especially children on the spectrum, to understand that your body is yours, communicating what you're comfortable with and what you're uncomfortable with, and not showing that you're upset with them when they don't want to engage in a physical interaction that you feel is fine and that they should. That just creates an environment for them to come to you if they are having an issue, if you respect their boundaries, even young children. Okay, another step is different type of touches. So individuals on the spectrum are often asked to sit quietly and allow their bodies to be touched by strangers a lot, whether it's doctors, therapists, aides, care assistants. And this leaves them vulnerable to abuse. Why? Because they're used to people touching their physical body whether it's for therapy, whether it's appropriate, but it becomes a norm. And again, oftentimes children are not asked on the spectrum whether they want to engage in some of these therapies or supports. So you can become used to just going along with whatever an adult says. And oftentimes they may meet new adults throughout their therapy. So it's not like, oh, when you get to know this person, they're going to be helping you with this part of support. Sometimes it might be one person this day, it might be a different person the next week. So really driving home that consent is important. So talking to them about comfortable or uncomfortable, okay and not okay, touches rather than good or bad. So try to avoid the use of the terms good or bad, because sometimes children assume when you use the word bad, if they are touched in that way, that they are bad. And that makes them not report something that they're uncomfortable with. So we try to use the word comfortable, uncomfortable, okay, and not okay when communicating about touches. Again, do not use the words good or bad touch. Using these words may make the child feel that they are bad if they are uncomfortable with a feeling. Teaching about business touch. So for example, it is a business touch of the doctor to touch your foot and to help it stop hurting. Especially as children get older, you know, doctors may need to touch their private parts, but discussing that the doctor should be explaining to you what they're doing to your body. And really pushing them to advocate for themselves, even when it comes to a business touch. And this is an excellent time to talk about private, who can touch, and why the touch is happening. So I even encourage parents when they go to the doctor, having the doctor not just talk to you as a parent, but explaining to the child what is happening, looking at them, having the child be able to ask questions regarding what is happening to their body. Again, it drives home the point that your body belongs to you. People cannot just touch your body without your consent or without explaining to you what they're doing and the purpose of why they're touching you. So I'm just going to show you a great video throughout the workshop. I want to share with you some resources. At the end, there will be a full page of resources that you can use to teach some of these topics. But this video is from amaze.org. It's a great resource to talk about some of these topics with your child, with those that you work with in the education system. So it's a short video. Just take a look.
Sí, lo sé probar, te la que sé.
I'm Sarah. I want to talk to you about a very important protective
Agua,
You
agua.
have to know the difference between a safe touch and an unsafe touch. We all know safe touches, like hugs from our family or high fives with our friends. Unsafe touches are touches to private parts of your body. No one can ever touch
Desiree, sorry, can you unmute the video and take it back like maybe 30 seconds? I believe you have to unmute yourself. I muted everybody. But I believe I muted you as well. So if you can just unmute yourself. Yes, you're fine, you're fine.
Okay.
parts of your body. No one can ever touch parts of your body that are covered by a bathing suit, or ask you to touch them on those parts. But it is okay for a doctor to touch you on private parts when they're giving you a checkup and your mom or dad is in the room. These are safe touches. If someone gives you an unsafe touch, they might want you to keep it a secret. They might make you promise or give you presents to keep you from telling. But you always have to tell another grown-up about unsafe touches, no matter what. If you were touched on a private part of your body by someone you know or someone in your family, tell your teacher or another family member. It's never your fault if someone touches you like this. If it happens, other grown-ups want you to tell. Keep telling until someone helps you, and make sure the unsafe touch never happens again.
Okay, so that is just an example of a tool that you can use when talking to children about their body parts, touching. A lot of times in my sessions, I use videos with students because it's a conversation starter. And also, like I said, visuals are great so they can actually see a visual representation of what you are trying to teach them. Okay. So communicating about their bodies and touches from others. So it's important to let your child know that they shouldn't worry about upsetting you or disappointing you when sharing concerns about their body or someone touching their body. This is very essential in terms of your child feeling comfortable communicating with you. So letting them know it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a family member, whether it's a close friend, whether it's a religious leader, whoever it is, you can come to me and tell me what's going on with you, and I'm going to be here to support you. Making sure that they understand that they can say no and tell an adult, preferably two adults, and no one would be upset for telling the truth. So I know I told you to have some paper near you. I just want you to think about, when you're thinking about your child, who are the people in your family or friend group that your child knows that they can go and speak to about an issue, or if they feel uncomfortable with someone touching them or saying something to them, and just jot it down on your paper. It's something to think about. A lot of times people don't think about it. They know who their friends and family are, but who do you know your child is most comfortable with? And also pinpointing to them, I've had a conversation with this person. They know that if there's an issue, I told them that you can come and speak to them, and they're comfortable with you coming to speak to them about issues involving their body or touching. So if you have a pencil, you can just think and write down, who do you think your child would feel comfortable with, or who would you want your child to go and tell if something happened to them. So make a list of trustworthy adults whom they can approach in an emergency, and also share your list with your child. So this can be an activity that you work on after this workshop. I want to talk to you about what adults you can talk to about your body, about whether someone touches you and you feel uncomfortable, and identify that things should never be kept a secret. So you shouldn't explain to your child that they shouldn't have secrets regarding people touching their body, people talking about their body. We often think that children already know this. We assume that they know they can come to us, but you should be having conversations with your child regarding these subjects. Okay, so I told you a lot of basic skills that you can work on. So if you haven't had these discussions with your child surrounding those basic skills, it would be a great time to talk about them. And once you feel like you've reached a point where they've developed adequate skills, or you at least started the conversations to help them build skills in those areas, I suggest you move on to some advanced skills that are important to talk about regarding safety. So some important skills to prioritize in this area is personal safety. So strategies for staying safe in various situations. As children get older, they are more outside of their parents' care in terms of participating in extracurricular activities, staying late at school, maybe having play dates where you're not actually present as a parent. So it's important to have conversations regarding personal safety. So when it's dark outside, is it best to walk by yourself or alone? How to pay attention to your surroundings, setting boundaries. Again, seeking help from trusted adults when they need it. What are community helpers? Who can you go to when you have a problem and you're out in the community? So personal safety is a topic you should be discussing with your child. And they should have a knowledge of their environment, their immediate area, around their house, around their school, at best how to navigate it safely. Internet safety is a big one, especially with teens. I know myself, I still need to stay up to date with all the different apps and that are out there. But as parents, you should have some knowledge about all the social media platforms, especially the ones that your children are on, so that you can talk to them about protecting their personal information, how to recognize potential dangers online, cyberbullying, online predators, and what are your boundaries in terms of them using social media platforms. I will say working in a high school, most conflicts, friendship issues, relationship issues, a lot of them stem from activity that's happening on social media platforms. You know, students have their own lives that they go on where they share information about themselves. People can comment, they talk to each other through direct message. So you really should be aware of what your child is doing on these social medias and how sites and how to keep them safe on them. And then safety in relationships as your child enters into various relationships, friendships, romantic relationships. What is a healthy and what is an unhealthy relationship? So these are some topics, especially when your child reaches 12 and older, really highlighting these topics with them, sitting down and having conversations regarding these areas. Okay, boundaries. This is something that I talk a lot about with the teens I work with in our sessions because it's a very important skill to learn about. And it's something that's needed to keep you safe, knowing what boundaries are. So again, whether it's in friendship relationships, whether it's with adults, whether it's with classmates, people you meet, understanding what boundaries are. So there are emotional boundaries that protect your own emotional well-being, physical boundaries, protecting your personal physical space, sexual boundaries, protecting your needs and safety sexually, material boundaries, protecting your personal belongings, and time, protecting the use and misuse of our time. One activity I usually do with teens is going through each of these areas and asking them, what are your boundaries in these areas? What are the things that you want to accept from people, and what are the things that you will not accept from people? And that helps you. Once you know that, you can know how to communicate your needs to others and navigate and determine whether you want to continue certain relationships or stop certain relationships. So I'll give you a simple example. Physical boundaries. I would prefer that people request to use my personal items rather than just grabbing them off my desk. That is something you have to know that that's your physical boundary, and also know how to communicate it to another person so they know how to interact with you. So an activity you can do with your child, again, is going through each of these areas and asking them, in these areas, what are the things that you are willing to accept? What are the things you like? What are the things you don't like for another person to do? And then you can practice with them role playing how to communicate those to others. So sometimes I do, to explain it further, what does this boundary sound like? What does this boundary look like? What does this boundary feel like? So if we look at this social story, the first one, Sarah vocalizes her discomfort with Jared. So she's vocalizing to him, I'm just not into holding hands right now. And he says, yeah, thanks for telling me. That's an example of how to communicate to someone a physical boundary that you have with them. How might it look like? In the second scenario, Andrea shows her body language when Tasha asks to see her personal drawings. So the other person is asking, is this your sketchbook? Oh man, this is really good stuff. And based on her body language, she's showing that she's uncomfortable. That's something that I go over often, because sometimes when communicating your boundaries, the students on the spectrum I work with will appear their facial expression will appear happy while they're trying to communicate to someone a firm boundary that they have, and practicing your body language to show what you're trying to communicate. And then the third, how do you feel in a situation? So Aria feels uncomfortable when thinking about the consequence of getting caught cheating. So he's having your child think about, how do I feel in this situation when my boundaries aren't respected? So this is another way that you can talk about boundaries with your child, and driving home the point of how do you feel when your boundaries are crossed? How do you communicate to someone else your boundaries? And how does that look like using your body language? Okay, so how do you teach safety? What ways can you use to teach safety? So you can directly and explicitly teach safe behaviors. You can serve as a role model, which is big. When talking about safety, you yourself as a parent should be modeling safe behaviors so your child can see what safe behaviors are. Seeing things for themselves and practicing repeatedly, reinforcing safe and appropriate behaviors, consistent consequences or restrictions for unsafe and inappropriate behaviors, social stories of videos, and signs and charts. So these are some ways that you can use to teach safety to your child or in an educational environment. I would say all these ways, try to tap in multiple ways of how to teach one skill, because again, it reiterates the importance of it, and it allows them times and multiple times to practice it. I'll be checking the chat, so if you have any questions, you can also put them in the chat and I will address them as I go through. Okay. Sexuality. What is sexuality, or the focus on sexuality? Everyone has feelings, sexual desires, a need for intimacy, and a need for closeness. This is an important topic because a lot of times society does not view or believe that people on the spectrum have feelings, sexual desires, a need for intimacy, a need for closeness, or they just avoid these topics altogether. So when we go to the CDC, this is a milestone regarding puberty. So from the ages of 12 to 14, this is a time of physical, mental, emotional, and social changes. Hormones change as puberty begins. So this is especially the time where you want to talk about these topics. Of course, you can talk about them before. If you haven't talked about them yet, you can backtrack. But this is the time to really focus in on these topics. Despite disability, hormones happen at this age generally. So most boys grow facial hair and pubic hair and their voices deepen. Most girls grow pubic hair and breasts and start their period. So these are times you should be having the conversations about puberty. What is happening to your body? Why are you feeling these changes? The skills that you need to have during this time. This is the time to talk about these important topics. Okay. So people on the spectrum are sexual and express their sexuality in ways that are as diverse as everyone else. This is something we want to drive home. This is something we want to make sure society at large understands. Young people on the spectrum experience physical and emotional changes as their peers. Everyone experiences sexual feelings, needs, and desires regardless of their abilities. And again, there's a myth that individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities are asexual, meaning without sex, which is false. So oftentimes I see it in my work. Sexual education is just not a priority. In general education, there's a lot of curriculums, health classes, they discuss sexual education. But a lot of times in specialized schools or settings, it's just not a priority to talk about. And it's most likely also due to this myth that it's not as much as an important topic to talk about with children, teens, and adults on the spectrum. So we want to make sure that you are having these conversations in your education settings and with your child. So young people on the spectrum and sexuality, they are often seen as childlike, and therefore many people do not acknowledge and or address them as sexual beings. As a result, many young people receive little to no information about sexual health. All young people need access and benefit from sexual health information. And it's important to present accurate and age-appropriate sexual health and sexuality information, even if you have to modify it. So again, there's so many resources online, which I'll be showing you to talk about these different topics. So whether you're using social stories, videos to teach it, role playing, whatever you're using to make the information accessible to all teens, all young people regarding sexual health, it's important that you do so. Okay, their rights. They have a right to ask questions about puberty, sex, periods, reproduction, and sexuality. So it's important to get comfortable in talking about these topics. And if you are uncomfortable, figuring out why you're uncomfortable talking about these topics. Oftentimes when I talk to parents, they might say, well, I don't want to bring up the topic because that might make them think about it more. I tell parents these topics are being discussed everywhere, whether your child is online, whether they're in school with peers, they're going to get information regarding these topics somewhere. And it's best that the information comes from you as their parent. Okay. Again, receiving medically, it's their right to receive age-appropriate and medically accurate information. Explore issues that interest them related to their sexual development, and develop the skills necessary to form healthy relationships and later healthy romantic relationships as they grow up. So that is why it's important to have accurate information. Again, the goal is for your child to form healthy relationships, and if they so choose to, engage in romantic partnerships as they grow older, and also knowing that they have support from caring adults within their community. So even if you're not as comfortable talking about it yet, maybe your partner is more comfortable talking about it and you work together, maybe a close family member is more comfortable talking about it at the time. But there should be people within their support system that they can go to ask questions regarding sexuality, regarding their sexual health. Okay, consent. So one area we want to encourage is that individuals advocate for themselves. So they feel empowered to advocate for their boundaries and preferences. Again, they have a right to say no or express discomfort in situations where their boundaries are not respected. Teaching them when to ask for consent. So as much as you need to know that other people need to ask you for consent regarding your body, understanding that you also need to ask others for consent. So knowing when it's necessary to ask for consent before taking action, whether it's initiating physical contact, sharing personal information, or engaging in activities together. So also having your child practice asking others for consent is an important skill and will help them later on in building healthy relationships. Respecting rejection. Understanding that it's okay for someone to say no or indicate that they're not comfortable with something, and respecting their decision without pressuring or coercing them. So again, this is a skill that can be practiced in friendships and in romantic relationships. There's a piece that ties into this with emotional regulation. So accepting someone's boundaries, even if it makes you frustrated, knowing how to handle your frustration in a healthy manner. So there's a component also working with your child on emotional regulation skills and learning from mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes through this process. Your child's going to make mistakes as they learn how to navigate relationship, sexuality. So recognizing that misunderstandings can happen, the ability to apologize and learn from mistakes. So the goal is not to make your child feel shame, extreme shame and guilt when they make mistakes along this process, but supporting them in learning from their mistakes and moving forward to healthy relationships. Okay, I just want us to briefly explore some of the resources that you can use. So Happy Learners is a great website for social stories and for information cards regarding different sexual health matters. So we're going to look at it quickly. So for example, this gives you facts that you can read off regarding periods, your first period, spotting, talking about your period. So it gives you really support in talking about some of these topics. And again, it has a list of different topics that you can go over with your child. So let's go up. So there's personal hygiene, sensory, social rules. So this is a tool that you can use that might be helpful to jumpstart the conversation for you. Go. Okay. PAautism.org also has social stories to help you talk about some topics that we are reviewing today. This social story is about consent. So I'll just read it all to you. Consent is when I give permission to touch my body. People should ask permission before they touch my body. I give consent when I say yes. If someone wants to hold hands or kiss, I can say yes if I want to. If I do not want someone to touch me, I can say no. I do not give consent for them to touch me. If I say yes, but change my mind, I can say no. That person should stop touching me. So social stories are a great tool that you can use. So this is a site that you can access, print them out, You can create binders of different social stories that have these topics so that your child can go back and reread when situations come up, or just a reminder. And again, amaze.org is a wonderful site for parents. So, and they also have an Amaze Junior for younger kids. So it has parent guides of how to teach certain topics. It has videos, which we saw one video from amaze.org already. So I just want to highlight some tools that you can use to talk about these topics. I know it's hard, or can be difficult to talk about them, but there's so many resources out there that are already available to jumpstart the conversation and help you feel more comfortable talking about some of these topics. So again, later on, I have a list that I can email out of some of these resources that you can use to get the conversation going. Okay. Finally, again, you can put questions in the chat if you have them. The last area we're going to talk about today is relationships. So why are relationships important? So the role of relationships in social, emotional, and cognitive growth. So interacting with others teaches individuals about social norms, communication skills, empathy, and cooperation. It's only in relationships that we can build some of these skills. So it's important to promote your child having relationships with others and creating opportunities for them to build relationships. You learn to recognize and understand your own emotions as well as those of others. It provides opportunities for learning, problem solving, and perspective taking, and it contributes to cognitive flexibility by exposing individuals to diverse viewpoints and experiences. So it's very important to promote interactions with other relationships. Everyone is not a person that loves having friends, even if it's one person to practice these skills with. But again, in the next slide, where it starts is with the family. So the foundation of these skills is family relationships. So this is just a circle of relationships. Usually it's yourself, then family, then friends, acquaintances, professional helpers, and strangers. That's the closest people to you to the least close. And then in the second image, we have acquaintances, friends, family, and romantic relationships. I really want to focus on the family in terms of being the foundation. So healthy family relationships sets you up for positive friendships and positive romantic relationships. So this is where a lot of your effort needs to be put. When you have healthy family relationships, it provides a safe space where children can express their emotions freely and receive comfort and reassurance. It also provides a sense of belonging. So it helps you to understand where you come from. It builds your self-confidence and positive self-image. Again, this is in healthy family relationships. So really, you should be focusing on positive affirmations. When your child is doing things independently, encouraging them, building their self-confidence in their abilities. Communication skills is a main one I talk to families about. This is where children learn to express themselves effectively, listen actively, and understand different perspectives. So everyone has a busy schedule. I definitely understand. With parents, you're working, you have a lot to do, but setting aside time to talk to your child, to engage in conversations. There's definitely fun activities out there in terms of conversation cards that you can use to bring up different topics, to practice communication skills. Again, when it comes to relationships, safety, communication skills is a top priority. Values and morals. This is where children learn about empathy, honesty, respect, and other important virtues that guide their decision-making. Socialization. They learn how to interact with others, resolve conflicts, is a main one in a healthy way and cooperate within a group. So within your family is the first place you learn how to resolve conflicts among people, which is essential for healthy friendships and healthy relationships. Knowing how to, when you disagree with someone, how does that look like? How is it done respectfully? How do people share their emotions with each other in a respectful manner? And then stability and security, knowing that they have a supportive family to rely on, gives them the confidence to explore the world and take risks, knowing that they have a safety net to fall back on if they need it. So the family is really a place where if healthy relationships are happening, it sets you up to have healthy friendships and have healthy romantic relationships. So when you think about these areas, there's always room for improvement in every family. Thinking about what areas do you think that there can be some improvement that you can spend some more time focusing on with your child to set them up for healthy relationships. After family, it's friendships. When children go to school, when they're in different social groups, that's where they have the opportunity to interact with their peers and again, display some of the things they learned from family relationships. So in terms of friendships, parents really should be supporting children in developing these skills, children and teens to develop these skills and practice them. So active listening is a very important skill in friendships. Teaching the importance of listening attentively to others, listening to understand. How do you show that you're actively listening to someone? How does that look like? Initiating interaction, strategies for starting conversations and making social plans, which can be anxiety producing. Not everyone is an extrovert and loves to interact or initiate interactions with others. So conversations about how do you feel when you have to go up to someone and introduce yourself or ask them if you can join an activity, especially if it's something that is not the most comfortable for your child. Talking about those emotions, talking about strategies to handle those emotions, role playing, putting them in situations that at first makes them comfortable in practicing the skill should be a priority. In friendships, you also learn about perspective taking, encouraging them to consider others' feelings and viewpoints. This is something that sometimes I see to be a challenge, and it's something that you can work on through different topics. So if you bring up a topic, even in your family, you can say, what's your viewpoint about it? This is my viewpoint, explain your point. So there's an understanding that people can have different viewpoints centering on a topic, and it's okay as long as we respect each other's viewpoints and communicate ours in a respectful way. Emotional regulation and problem solving, helping them to navigate conflicts and misunderstandings in friendships. I always say, if you have friendships, if you're in a family, conflicts are going to arise. Again, it's teaching how do you handle conflicts and misunderstandings. So really practicing that. If you hear your child has a conflict with someone, talking about how do you feel about that? How do you think they feel about it? How do you think you guys can move forward in maintaining a healthy friendship? In terms of emotional regulation, talking about how do you manage negative emotions? So everybody needs coping strategies, whether it's listening to music, whether it's drawing, whether it's taking a walk, drinking water, counting to 10. You should be working with your child to develop their own coping toolbox, I say. Things you can do when you experience negative emotions, and also problem solving in a situation of this happened, it didn't go well, what can I do next? So hypothetical situations work great. When something comes up, discussing it with your child of how to work through the problem. That's an important skill to focus on to build healthy friendships, teaching clear and direct communication skills, and then discussing the importance of honesty, respect, and kindness in friendships. Again, friendships are an important segue to fine-tuning the skills needed to date and find love. So this should be a focus in terms of what you should be supporting your child to do. Have healthy friendships with others, how to navigate friendships, because that sets them up in a positive way when you want to talk about dating. And that is our next topic. So dating. Romantic relationships are a natural part of many adolescents' development. Part of this development is teaching learners how to build self-awareness skills necessary to participate in relationships. This includes first understanding themselves and if they are ready to date, and how to handle romantic feelings or crushes. When my students ask me about dating, my first thing is knowing about yourself. That's the first step to be prepared for dating, is knowing about yourself first. So in terms of parents, I want to ask you, when you think of your child at their current age, do you think of them dating or being in a romantic relationship? Has it come to your mind? Is it something that you haven't really given time to think about? You can put it in the chat if you like. Is it something that you've thought about? Okay. If it's not something you've thought about, it's something you should think about. So this is an activity I wanted to do with you. This is the real reason why you have the paper out. I want you to think about some of these questions. If your child came to you to ask you these questions, what would be your response? So I'm going to give about 3 minutes for you to think, look at the questions, think about what your response would be. When students come to my office, they often nowadays talk about dating and the relationships they might be having. And the question I ask them is, have your parents ever talked to you about dating? A lot of them say no, or some of them say they just told me that I can't date till it could be 17, it could be 18, it could be 21. So that's mostly what they know, the boundary of I can't date until this time. But a conversation should go further than that, because when they turn 18, you still didn't have the conversation with them about your thoughts surrounding dating. So these are some questions to think about. At what age do you think it's appropriate to date? What is your definition of love? What are 3 rules or guidelines you have for me dating? Who would you like me to talk to when I have questions about dating? What are some important qualities you hope I look for in a dating relationship? Where are the places you would prefer I go on dates to? Do you have any guidelines you prefer me to follow for online dating? And what type of touching do you think is appropriate for dating? Most parents have not sat and thought out these questions. So sometimes when a child comes to talk to you about dating, you don't know where to start. You don't know what to say to them. But if you already have thought about these questions, you'll be prepared for the topic. Okay, someone wrote in the chat that sometimes the families don't think that their child on the spectrum can have a relationship. So again, it's reiterating that everyone has needs, desires, feelings. So begin to open your mind to think about the possibilities of this occurring. So this is something you can share if you work with families, an activity that they can do to prepare for these topics, and something they can communicate with their child when they actually have the answers to these questions. All right, when we think about dating, so if your child says, I'm ready to date, this is something I've been thinking about, they might be interested in someone. These are some questions that you can discuss with them, have a conversation with them about before they begin dating. These are some questions they should ask themselves. Do I have the time or energy to dedicate to someone? Am I ready to consider someone else's feelings? A lot of times you may have your own rigid routine or things you like to do in a certain way. And when you enter in a relationship, you have to consider someone else's feelings. What do they like to do? Are you ready to do that? Do you have adequate emotional regulation skills? Again, this is something that you would have seen from maybe some of the relationships your child have been in or their interactions with you, family members. What are their emotional regulation skills? And if you as a parent feel they're not adequate, having that conversation with them, do you feel like when you're disappointed that you're able to use certain strategies to help yourself remain calm or communicate your feelings in a calm and respectful manner? And how can we work on building those skills? Thinking about what type of person am I looking for? Who is a good fit for me? So based on your personality, based on your likes and dislikes, who do you imagine would be a good fit for you? That's something that you can put in their mind to think about. And how do I want to approach dating? There's multiple ways to approach dating. So that's an important conversation to have. Will it be group dates? Will it be online dates? Will it be individual dates? What does dating look like? So these are some conversation questions that you can speak to your child about. And then once they're in the dating process, they might be dating one person and that's their focus. They might be getting to know multiple people. Questions before you enter a relationship. How can I tell if someone likes me? What social cues should I be picking up on based on the conversation? How do I know this person is interested in me as well? Can we be more than friends? Again, the discussion of consent. Then the rules of dating. How many times do you contact someone without hearing back before you stop? Personal values. I say there's so many unwritten dating rules. This conversation should be ongoing as they gain knowledge, as they have more questions, as you have more questions from them. It should be an ongoing conversation and supporting them through the process and encouraging them to, if it's something that they want, if it's something they're interested in, how best to move forward. So these are just some conversation points to have around dating and relationships. Okay. And also understanding that challenges may occur. So nothing is perfect. No one's dating journey is perfect. So understanding there might be communication difficulties in understanding social cues, nuances, nonverbal communication. There might be sensory sensitivities. Some places might be overwhelming, which can impact social interactions. But again, this goes back to knowing yourself, knowing your needs, knowing your boundaries, and being able to communicate it to another person. There might be challenges with perspective taking, emotional regulation, or empathy. Everyone goes through their first heartbreak. What does that look like? How do you handle it emotionally? There might be issues around that you might need to discuss, or challenges. How can you support your child in that area? And rigidity and routine. So there might be some difficulty adapting to changes, which can affect a relationship dynamic. But again, if you're encouraging your child to build skills of open communication, it'll be not less likely they will occur, but they'll be able to handle it in a healthy way. So again, that's why it's important to build some of these skills from the foundation of family to friendships, because by the time you get to dating, it'll be less instances of these challenges occurring if you practice them from their younger upward. Right. This is a healthy resource, a positive resource that you can use. I got this from Teachers Pay Teachers. Again, it will be in the slide of free resources. So this is just a dating timeline that can be helpful. It's a it's free, so it's a poster you can print when the conversation of dating comes up, going through the different stages. So 1, things you must know about someone before dating. It kind of gives you a guideline that's easy to follow. 2, be friends first, not rushing into a relationship, really getting to know the person before you jump into a relationship with them. 3, are they interested in dating you? How to figure out if someone is interested in dating you, the signs to look for. 4, asking someone on a date. Once you spent time getting to know them, how can you ask them to go on a date with you to know them a little better? 5, talking about being a boyfriend or girlfriend. What should be the timeline of that? Should you meet someone today and then tomorrow you're talking about being their boyfriend or girlfriend? How many dates? So here it gives you the prompt of at least after 6 dates, then maybe you can talk about being boyfriend and girlfriend. And then what happens when a relationship doesn't go as planned? So if you're not happy in a relationship, ask yourself these questions. So again, using these tools that are online can be helpful in guiding your child through the dating process and supporting them through the process. Again, dating comes with its ups and downs, so you definitely need a village to support you through it. So we're gonna watch a quick video. Again, it's from amaze.org. It's a resource that talks about dating.
Wow, you really like Nora, don't you? Yeah, she's awesome. I just hope I can be awesome too. She's my first girlfriend, so I'm really new at this. I mean, this will literally be the first year I don't take my ant farm to the spring fling. That's why I'm here. Let's have a talk about healthy relationships. As you get older, it's normal to feel more independent from your family and closer to your friends. Some friendships can develop into romantic relationships, where you feel a special emotional connection, which could also be physical or sexual. Relationships can be amazing, but if they're unhealthy, they can also be complicated and stressful. So how do I know if my relationship is healthy? Whether friendship or romance, every healthy relationship is based on respect, equity, and communication. In a respectful relationship, each person is valued for who they are, so you can feel confident expressing yourself or saying no to something you disagree with, without fear of being judged or ignored. If someone regularly teases you or pressures you into doing things you're not comfortable with, it shows a lack of respect and could be a sign of an unhealthy relationship. It's also important for both people to be treated as equal partners. Then you can cooperate and compromise together in a balanced way while respecting each other as individuals. If someone tries to control their partner or the relationship, for example, by making all the decisions or sending tons of texts to check up on you, it's another bad sign. In a relationship with good communication, you'll feel free to say what you mean and mean what you say. When disagreements come up, you can discuss them openly, listen to each other, find a solution, and you'll both be willing to apologize if you hurt each other. In an unhealthy relationship, disagreements may be met with silence, or one person may try to pressure, bully, or belittle the other into agreement. The bottom line, in a healthy relationship, you'll feel good about your partner and yourself. Thanks. My relationship with Nora feels really healthy so far. Man, the spring fling is going to be so much more fun with her this year. Oh, sorry guys.
Okay, so again, videos like that on amaze.org are helpful to talk about some of these topics, can be a conversation starter in talking about what is a healthy relationship, what is an unhealthy relationship. If you find out your relationship is unhealthy, what are the next steps? Do you want to work on it? You should communicate with the person if they're doing something that makes you feel uncomfortable, conversations of how you can move forward, and if there's no resolve, when it's appropriate to end a relationship. So again, these are topics that you should be talking about once your child tells you that they're interested in dating or whether they're in a relationship, how to support them through the process. Okay. Let's go there. So this page is some of the free resources that I showed throughout the presentation. Again, Teachers Pay Teachers. A lot of educators know about that site. It has tons of cheap resources and free resources regarding dating. So the timeline I showed you, those questions are two of the resources I found from Teachers Pay Teachers. PAA Autism has social stories. Happy Learners has social stories that you can use. Amaze.org is a wonderful website, and they also have a YouTube channel where you can find a lot of resources on dating, sex education, parent guides, posters. And they also have a challenge that parents can sign up for. I believe it's a 6-day challenge where you put in how old is your child, what are the topics you would like to talk about, whether it's puberty, sexual education, and they send you resources over the next 6 days. Kidshealth.org is another website that is helpful. So it has resources for parents, for kids, for teens, and educators. That you might find helpful. Fight Child Abuse is also a site that has helpful videos that you can show for all ages. So K-3, 4-6, teens, and older. So that's another website that might be helpful in talking about these topics. ResearchAutism.org also has helpful information and articles regarding relationships for educators, families, and self-advocates. And autism.org also has sex education, a guide for parents. So again, there's a lot of resources out there to prepare you to talk about these topics. I hope after today that you feel a little more comfortable and knowing that you don't have to come up with the information on your own. There's information out there that can jumpstart these conversations again, starting from their young, talking about their body and consent. And as the child gets older, talking about more advanced skills, making a safe space for your child to come to you to talk about any of these topics. Because whether you talk to them about it or not, again, their peers may be talking about it. They might be watching videos on YouTube, and it can be confusing to them, and they might not share it with you if you haven't already shared with them that they can talk to you about anything related to these topics. And really, as a parent, sitting down and thinking about, what do you think about these topics? From now, what do you think about dating? What do you think about independence in some of these other areas? And how you can best support your child through the process. I hope this workshop was beneficial and you got a place to start from when you leave the workshop, conversations you can have. So I'm going to open it up to any questions or comments anyone would like to make. Let me stop.
Thank you so much, Desiree. We're gonna wait and see if anybody has any questions. I do want to ask a question. And while we wait for everybody else, but we saw in the chat that some families might have a harder time bringing these conversations forward. So for educators or for us as an organization or for advocates out there, what are maybe tips on bringing these conversations forward, in a way that is not too confronting, but also encouraging parents to have these type of conversations at home? Because we always talk about having at least one trusted adult, but it's also important that it happens at home. So how can we encourage that more?
Okay. I would start with safety because that's what every parent cares about. Whenever I talk to parents about issues, they say, my main concern is keeping my child safe. So safety is a segue of how you can talk about these topics. It's important to talk to your child about their body parts, what's happening with their body, because that helps them keep them safe. You don't want them to be in a situation where they don't know what's going on and they're not able to communicate it to you. And most parents, when you start with safety, that's a segue into some of these topics. Also, in terms of dating, relationships, I always tell parents, this is what's happening around them. So I know you think that not having these conversations or shielding them from the conversations, but it's not, because a lot of peers are talking about dating. And who would you rather your child get information from? The internet and their friends, or you as a primary source? And most of the time, parents do want to guide certain conversations with their children because they know their own boundaries within their home, their own moral values. So if you want your child to put that be in the conversation in terms of dating and relationships, you really should be the one spearheading those conversations. So that's a good way for parents to feel comfortable. They kind of understand that, like, yeah, I do have my own boundaries and moral values in my home that I want my child to be aware of when they are exposed to this information outside of my home. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you. I don't know if somebody else has another question right now. Maybe if there are parents or educators, or also young adults. I know that Byron is here, but I don't know if there are other teens or young adults present. If you have a question.
You feel free to ask, either in Pavimento or in English. If you're speaking in Pavimento, we can translate it as much as possible.
Yep. Any educators or educators talking about these? I don't know what spheres the educators are in. Are you guys in schools? Are you in organizations? Or just supporting families in general?
Don't feel shy. You can ask in the chat, or you can unmute yourself to talk.
So while we wait and see if everybody, I do have to say it was a very good presentation, Deseray. Thank you so much. It was very extensive. But I have questions that are real questions that we get, that I get as well from the foundation, which is why we also have decided, we're gonna give this topic or these type of topics around adolescence a little bit more attention. But usually, or not usually, we have had several cases where especially adolescent boys have found themselves in uncomfortable situations at school, where they might not have learned how to approach somebody, ask for consent, or how to express their liking for somebody, and they get in trouble, right? And the school kind of gets concerned, and then parents will say things along the line like, we've had conversations with our children about sexuality to a certain extent. But usually it's a multi-children household, and the conversations tend to be a little bit more nuanced and, not maybe as explicit as they would have to be with somebody on the spectrum. And I think educators also find themselves in an uncomfortable situation at that point, because you have to take care of the safety of everyone. But what might be things that we should keep in mind to navigate these situations, to ensure the safety of everybody, but also understanding that if we do not have proper resources in place, or if we do not have the conversation soon enough, it might cause an uncomfortable situation.
In terms of having conversations, it's important, when I talked about how learning takes place, really in schools, like social stories. So when situations occur, obviously there's things you can do to prepare for situations. But when the situations occur, that's your opportunity to use that to teach. So there's been times where there's been inappropriate, maybe they didn't ask for consent and they went to give someone a hug, or they kissed them because they liked them. Okay, let's do a social story regarding it. What is the situation that happened? Backtracking and replaying it in the more appropriate way. Having, whether it's a binder of different social stories, when there is someone I like, I should be doing this. And it's something that you should be going over with the child or teen, and also doing role plays with them. Posters, a lot of times children are on not social media, really YouTube a lot. That's an opportunity to take advantage of it, because you can create playlists for your child regarding these different topics, to be reviewing the topics with them. And if parents have conversations with school and there's collaboration, the topics can be taught in both areas. So parents might come to me and say, I have 5 kids. I don't have time to sit down with them and talk about these issues. And oftentimes issues that are occurring in school, sometimes occurring at home in a different way. When they ask you for your items at home, do they ask you first before taking them? No, so they're not even practicing consent at home. So these are the ways you can teach it at home and practice it. This is what we're going to do in the school, and we're going to be communicating. And the child knows all of us are working together to address this issue. So that's what I would say, working together as a team when a situation happens, creating tools for that child or teen that they can remember what to do next time, and pointing out when they're doing appropriate behavior. Like, I liked when you asked that person before you gave them a hug. That is what consent is. So you have to continually point out, the skills, when the skills are taking place in a positive manner. And again, it takes practice, it takes time.
Thank you for that. I think that the main takeaway is indeed try to use the opportunity, silver lining in that moment, and try to use the opportunity to have conversations on topics that might be difficult, but taking that momentum as well, as it will create hopefully an impactful opportunity. So we have some questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to take a look at them. We have 3 questions in the chat.
I'm giving special education at school, and the kids are asking me so much questions that they wouldn't ask their parents. But so now I still don't know how to get parents to be more open about these topics. Okay. I think oftentimes if parents it might take a while for them not to be comfortable talking about it. So I often tell them, are you comfortable with me talking about these topics with your child? Some of the conversations you're not comfortable talking about yet. And as I talk to them about it, I'm going to send home or share the resources I use. So that sometimes gets it started with parents, because parents know that you're taking the lead and they're supporting you until they're more comfortable surrounding these topics. Or then I'll call them and say, I spoke to your child about this. These are the resources I'm sending home. this is how you can broach the subject with him or ask him a follow-up question about it. So that's how I would address it if some of the parents are giving resistance in talking about it, taking the lead on it, if they allow you to, and supporting them with resources. The next question, as I said, I work in adult daycare, but the topic sexuality is a topic that the parents of the people where I work, they don't talk or don't know how to talk to their children or family members. So we as educators have started using what we learned tonight, using the websites to see how and what to start using to help in these situations with this topic. Thanks for this workshop. You're welcome. Yes, the videos are going to be very helpful in things that you can share with them as much as you can share. If you can create, like I can email the websites to you, Carolina, and you can send it out to everyone or post it. But if parents know they have resources, they feel more comfortable, because when you have to talk about a topic without resources and it's not something you're comfortable with, it's very difficult. But if you can show a video and ask your child, okay, what did you take from this video? What did you learn about this? And again, driving home why it's important for them to have this conversation, slowly but surely, family members start to get on board. Okay, my husband had a question. In our case, our 5-year-old tends to be a little interested in touching his power parts, and we have tried speaking to him numerous times, but are not sure if we are saying the right things. Can you advise on this topic? Okay. Yeah, 5-year-olds explore their body. That's something that children tend to do, because one thing I tell families, the feeling you get from exploring your body, sometimes other things don't replace that. But what I drive home is, don't make the child feel like it's negative, like their body parts are bad. So not using the word, that's a bad touch, don't do that. It creates negative thoughts regarding your body, but also talking about private and public places. That's a conversation that you talk about with children. Like, it's not appropriate to touch your private parts in school, around people. Those are not places. So having a conversation about public and private is a conversation you should talk about, and not just making sure as children explore, not making them feel shame regarding body parts. Might not stop overnight, but it's something that's normal around that age for children to explore their body parts and different feelings they feel from touching their body parts. So that would be my advice regarding that.
Thank you, Desiree, for the answers and for the explanations. And I do encourage everybody, of course, if you found some of the resources interesting, I will make sure that I share, if that's okay with you, the slide, and we will also be uploading the recording of today. So if you have colleagues, friends, families that you would like them to follow this conversation as well, this presentation, they could do that. So I will be uploading it probably on YouTube in the coming days, and I will be sharing the link as well. And once again, thank you very much. I would love to see some of these resources slowly translated into Papiamento, so that, they could be also usable in our language. Although I do have to say that a lot of younger children and teens, prefer to have these conversations in English. Like you said, they're mostly on YouTube and stuff like that. But, a lot of people still have Papiamento as a main language at home. So we will try to look at some of these resources, see, what can be easily applicable or usable. By all means, if there's anybody who enjoys Papiamento and likes doing this, please let us know. We are always looking for translating volunteers. It's usually a lot of work, but it's nice to have resources in our local language, of course. All right, I don't know if anybody else has any questions. And Desiree, if you have anything else that you want to leave us with.
No, thank you for allowing me to give this workshop to you. I hope it was helpful. And again, as educators, we also have to feel comfortable talking about it. Reach out. You can always, my email will be somewhere. I'll send it with the link. You can share it. If you have a question, I'm open to answering questions or providing you with additional resources, parents, educators. It's something that I'm trying to have more people feel comfortable talking about it, even in the school system, teachers, families. So definitely reach out to me. I'm open for you reaching out to me. And again, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
just want to add. I just want to add something to this one. I know there are a lot of red flags when it comes to sexuality, dating, and now that I recognize the risks and benefits of it, I can feel more comfortable in the near future, whether I have a relationship or not. So it's very cool, helpful.
Yay.
Happy to hear that.
Awesome, Byron. Thank you so much for your input.
Yes.
So Desiree, we have a couple of more sessions that we will be planning with you. So for everybody who was here today, I hope that you enjoyed Desiree's presentation. We will be planning some more sessions with her throughout the year. So we will have, I think it is like 3 more. And of course, you know, if we feel like there are things that we should talk to her about that we should be doing as well. But we are very excited to continue this partnership. And yes, you know, to have we try to work with local but also international experts on things that can be helpful. And that is a very amazing thing that we can speak different languages, so we can speak to different experts in different places. So thank you once again, Desiree, for your support and your willingness to do this.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, everyone. I will stop the recording, and remember, it would be available, I want to say later this week on YouTube, but I will send it in an email together with the link. And if you have any additional questions, you know, before you get Desiree's email, you can send it to our email, and I will make sure to relay that. But if you have any suggestion on specific things that maybe we discussed today that you would like to have, you know, another session about, maybe in more detail, you know, in a more interactive way, please do let us know, and we can talk to Desiree about the possibilities of doing that. I think there was a lot of very nice information in there. So please feel free to let us know. Thank you. A good evening to all, and stay tuned for our next sessions. We will have 2 sessions in May, another session for youth, and a session for educators who are teachers in secondary education. And it's just about general considerations in secondary education. So just make sure to follow our social media for dates, registration links, and everything. Thank you so much. Bye.